Christians held that there were 7 sacraments, a position that the Catholic Church maintains as the Reformation moves forward, but which Protestants deny. Luther and Calvin argued that while marriage is ordained by God and the desired and preferable condition for all men, and especially women, it's not a sacrament. So this is actually a big change. Now, because the English Reformation starts with Henry VIII trying to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, who's been unable to produce a male heir, and because he's having an affair with somebody else and he wants to marry her, marriage becomes a central issue for the English Reformation. So we can imagine that if you think Shakespeare is Shakespeare, for most of his life, and even if you think Shakespeare is somebody else, for most of their lives, marriage has been this huge political and religious controversy. Now, making a marriage in the pre-Reformation period, so to make a marriage, a canonical, legal, and binding marriage, you can do it in 2 ways. The first way is that the couple freely consents to marry each other in the present tense. So I take you, Bob, to be my lawfully wedded husband. So that's in the present tense. You think that we go on and on about tenses because we're just petty, but they're actually really important. Now, the other way of making a marriage, and again, this is pre-Reformation, is that you consent in the future tense. I will take you, Bob. And then you have sex. At some point, you promise this, and then 6 years later you have sex. You have sex right away because that's why you promised it, because it's the heat of the passion. So what's at stake here is free consent. You don't need a priest. You don't need parental consent. God makes the sacrament. Now, as you can imagine, this creates a lot of problems, such as whether half the couple has previously contracted a betrothal or a marriage, or whether they inadvertently created a marriage in the heat of passion by accident because they weren't paying attention. Church court cases are filled with this stuff. Now, what church courts end up focusing on is enforcing marriages they can prove exist because there's a witness. Servant peeping through the keyhole. We got a lot of that through the window. They leave up to God to deal with marriages that existed but that they cannot prove. So, God will work that out because they don't have a witness. And so if you manage to get married and you don't have a witness, the law can't do anything. You go up and marry somebody else. So in a world without legal divorce, bigamy is actually a common accusation because a lot of people are self-divorcing. And then they just leave the village, go somewhere else, London, contract a marriage, and then invariably somebody shows up and goes, but you're married to Bob. You don't get to be married to Ellen. And then there's a court case. But, we have absolutely no idea how many people actually get away with this. But this is the stuff of ecclesiastical court records. Now, another issue is the betrothal. Because vows in future tense, without any subsequent sexual intercourse, mean that the marriage is partially there. You're like on a moving train. And it can't be undone. You don't stop, you stop the train, but then reverse it, you'll get crashed by the other oncoming train. So betrothals don't get broken. So in the case of Claudio and Juliet, under the old laws, they have a binding marriage, they have had a betrothal, and they've consummated their relationship. Now, these are pre-Reformation rules. So the Reformation comes along. Both Protestants and Catholics actually try and address this issue of a clandestine or secret marriage. The Council of Trent, for those of you who don't remember when that is, it's 1545 to 1563, mandated that in addition to the couple's consent, so free consent is still really important, a priest has to post the banns. This is the part where the priest gets up there and says, does anybody know why this couple should not be? Well, you have to do it 3 times, and you do it. You put it on the door of the church. And the priest is necessary to bless the union. So that's a big change with Council of Trent. The Protestants, they also insist on banns. They say it's not a sacrament. They want a minister to bless the union, but they also say you need parental consent. Now, change doesn't come easily. This all seems actually pretty straightforward, but both monarchs and citizens across Europe resist, challenge, and misunderstand these new marriage procedures. And Measure for Measure plays with these tensions, asking the audience to think about what moment a couple becomes married and what actions and beliefs actually make a marriage. So under under both pre- and post-Tridentine rules, Angelo, the hypocritical duke, and Mariana, a woman you're going to learn about, are halfway married. They've made a contract. But moreover, Mariana has given her consent, believes that she has the friar's blessing on her union, furthering along her marriage. But what's missing is Angelo has withheld his free consent. He said, yeah, I was going to marry you, but when you lost that dowry, I'm not so interested anymore. And so he pulls back his free contract. So, this is sort of where that relationship is. Now, this explains why Mariana says in Act 5, Scene 1, that she is neither married, nor maid, nor widow. Her status is very betwixt and between. This status would also have had resonance for an early modern audience because the ability to classify a woman by her marital status is central. It's central to what are her legal rights, because married women and single women have very different legal rights. It also has a lot to do with what her public reputation is. So Mariana, who has been betrothed, but is not married, is in real danger of social oblivion if she cannot complete this marriage. Now the audience has added knowledge. They know that the friar is not a friar. But he's the duke, and so this puts her in a further tenuous position. To make this marriage complete and to effect the sacrament, Angelo needs to give his consent, and a real priest needs to bless the union. So while Claudio and Juliet are under the new rules, now legally guilty of fornication, church courts would have actually recognized that their fornication was of a different quality than Claudio's friend, who happens to like prostitutes and has gotten one of them pregnant. So in fact, coming before a church court, the judges would have handled Claudio and Juliet really differently than they would have handled Lucio and the prostitute. They would have just made Claudio and Juliet get married then and there. Say the vows in the future, in the present tense, and we'll find a priest to bless you. Now to add one concluding layer on these marital issues, we need to also remember that in this play, which is originally performed in a Protestant country, but it's about a Catholic country, the early modern audience would have understood that under Protestant rules, betrothals can be broken. So Angelo actually hasn't done anything sort of particularly problematic from a Protestant perspective. Even sleeping with her doesn't recreate the betrothal or the marriage. Moreover, the Anglican Church had as its head a queen until 1603 and then a king, which further complicates sort of how you understand Mariana. Because Mariana's relationship with Angelo has been blessed not by a friar who's really not a priest, but by the duke who's the head of the state. So what we're seeing here then is, I think, Shakespeare playing around with these new and switching marriage rules. That Angelo has done something wrong according to Catholic doctrine, but he's behaving in some ways that's rather Protestant. And so I think that this makes the play make a little bit more sense if you understand something about how the Reformation is changing marriage rules, which, actually